Right. Shall we get started? 1:45? Yep. Okay. I forgot I'm the moderator, so I have to start this session. Okay. Welcome everyone to our session today. I'm taking over from our moderator, Arlie Owens. Unfortunately, he had a family emergency and wasn't able to make it to moderate. So apologies in advance if this is a little choppy, but but we'll do our best. So this session is on best practices for DEI in the industry and with SROs, and we're happy to have with us Mary McClellan from the Carolina Recycling Association and Julia Au from NCRA, Northern California Recycling Association. And I'm Sophia Huda. I am the chair of the Justice, Equity, Diversity and Inclusion Committee at NRC. So we're going to start with, I'm going to open with our results from our surveys of state recycling organizations. And then Mary and Julia are going to talk a bit about the practices that they implement at or their experience rather with their organizations. So give me a chance. Oh, and some housekeeping, right? I'm the moderator. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat. And after we've had our presentations, I'll refer to them and we can talk about them. I think that's the only thing that I have to tell you. So let's start this presentation. There we go. Okay, where are we? Okay, so I assume everyone can see that. Thumbs up, everyone, if you can see it, my presentation. Yep, okay, perfect. So yeah, so this is State Recycling Organization surveys, results and next steps from the JEDI committee at NRC. So to begin, let me minimize this, sorry. We sent out a survey of about 17 questions this past September to ask how SROs address JEDI issues and what more they want to do. We received 12 responses out of 21, out of 27 sent out. So not the majority, but they do represent a wide swath of SROs from across the country. This was the profile. 50% of respondents were executive directors of their organization, and then after that, president or VP, and then some staff, program directors, and principal sustainability officers at the organization, and board members as well. So first, we looked at how organizations address JEDI issues. We asked, have you evaluated how your organization addresses justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion? And we got a huge amount who said, a majority who said they have evaluated these issues. So we're happy to see that. But from as many that have said yes, for that question, the same amount said no to having adopted policies or programs to address JEDI issues. Examples of how those who have adopted or addressed these issues is developing a DEI statement and integrating them. Some even integrated them into their bylaws. Holding DEI workshops and trainings for leaders of their organization and staff. Providing scholarships for minority and women-owned business and enterprises to attend their annual conference. Actually having a DEI committee. Data collection and surveys. One organization even hired a consultant to develop DEI policies for their SRO, and having intentionality in their hiring practices in terms of addressing diversity. 1/3 of SROs have a diversity, anti-racism, or JEDI committee, task force, or advisory council. Most SROs have addressed JEDI issues at their annual conferences. So the importance and place of that in the waste industry benefits to companies, employees, and communities. Over half of SROs are currently focused on implementing DEI trainings for their staff and or board, and surveys of their members They mostly use their newsletters and speakers at their annual conference to communicate on these issues to their members. And those are, some of the major communications tools they have. So that's good to see. And surprisingly, 80% of SROs did express an interest in getting assistance from NGOs that specialize in these issues to help them develop and implement these programs. So where could SROs improve based on our survey results? So very few of them gather data on the outcomes of their programs, especially, for example, to data that shows economic support or supports economic benefits to communities or anything else like that. And then in your opinion, is your organization dedicated to justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion? It was a rather ambivalent answer. Some opinions that we got from the surveys, one that stands out, and of course, some of you who are trying to work on this in your own organizations probably can identify with that, is that there's a leap from words to actions that they didn't anticipate being difficult. And that's, true for so many things, but especially with something like justice, equity, and diversity and inclusion. We need more training and discussion time for our board on the importance of these issues in order to build their understanding and awareness. So here, an issue is also how to get their board members on board and understanding these issues and helping to sort of frame and center JEDI in their organization. Surveys as well. Surveys are not easy. Doing the survey for this, of course, trying to get responses. I'm doing a survey for a research paper I'm writing for my other job. Not easy to get responses. So that is a big task, much bigger than, easier said than done, to have surveys and gather data. So obviously, we are committed to diversity and inclusion, but we haven't succeeded in creating a diverse board. Find it difficult to secure board members in general. So yeah, if you're having difficulty finding board members, trying to implement diversity and inclusion into that search is going to be difficult. And one SRO expressed it was challenging to find board members under 40. And that's important to remember, that diversity doesn't just mean, racial diversity or gender diversity. Age diversity is very important, especially for this industry, because it's good to get a wide range of opinions. Different age groups have different experiences and relationships to environmentalism, to waste management, to recycling. And so it is important to also think about age range. And then we don't have a process in place to ensure the diversity and inclusivity of our board, which goes hand in hand with the fact that it is in general difficult to find board members and secure their participation and commitment to the work. So these are understandable challenges and interesting to hear as well. Oh, sorry. But what we have found is that, in contrast to the ambivalence of the previous question, is your organization dedicated to JEDI issues? People do agree that it is important for the industry to prioritize justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. And what we get from this is that our committee needs to better understand what role SROs can play in furthering JEDI in the waste management industry, and how we can help them to do so. Because if they're ambivalent about the importance for their organizations, but very understanding of the importance for the industry as a whole, there's a bit of a gap there. And so this survey helped us understand, and the next steps for us are to understand how we can work with SROs to make them understand the importance for their organization and how that can help benefit the rest of the industry as a whole. So that's everything from me. And I think I'm going to hand it over to Mary to give her presentation.
Sorry, I was muted. Thank you, Sophia. I appreciate it. Let me pull this up really quick. All right. I think that's good. Let me know if it's not. Hi, everybody. I'm Mary McClellan. I'm Executive Director of the Carolina Recycling Association. And I'm so pleased to be here today and to have been invited to talk about these really important issues and initiatives that we have going on. This is our mission, nice and generic, like all mission statements, right? But we are aiming to conserve resources by advancing waste reduction and recycling throughout the Carolinas. So we represent both North and South Carolina industry. This is a map of our members and folks who attend our conference. So we really, from most areas of both states, have representation in the business, nonprofit, university, and government sectors. So talking a little bit about DEI though, so we've been around since 1989, the CRA has. We just implemented our DEI program starting in 2020. And we started out the program with adopting a DEI statement and an action plan that our board, reviewed and voted on formally in a formal process and became our official statement. And so this is the statement. The Carolina Recycling Association recognizes the inherent value of diversity, equity, and inclusion to our organization, governance. Oops, please don't advance. Go back. I didn't memorize the statement. I've got to read it. These are going really slow too. I apologize, I don't know why. The inherent value of diversity, equity, and inclusion to our organization, governance, and membership. Diversity and inclusivity increase and enhance our understanding of people from all walks of life and bringing more varied personal and career experiences to our mission and actions. This will only broaden our ability to fulfill our purpose to advance waste reduction and recycling in all segments of the population. We really wanted to carry that forward from just a pretty statement to actual action. And that was really important for me as leading this process, that we really find a role that we can play in this within our association for our members. And so the first thing we did is form an advisory committee. And this is a committee that meets regularly, that works on planning our diversity, our DEI meeting annually with our members. And also we are charging the committee with looking at our activities and policies and what messages we are bringing to our membership, and therefore to both North and South Carolina professionals that trickle down into communities, that we're looking at all of those things through this lens of DEI. And that is a big task, but it is, a priority. So that was the first area of focus in our action plan. Our second area is data gathering. So, as we started having these discussions, we realized we really don't have any concrete data about the diversity reflected in our own association, or really there's not much data about the entire industry and socioeconomic, racial, gender data. I have not found a good source for that. And so our commitment is to begin gathering this data and building a baseline. And the last part of the action plan is financial support. So, we felt like we needed to invest in this in a real way. And so to bring more diversity into the association, to bring more people into the fold whose voices, maybe have not been at the table, we really need to provide a financial backing for that. And so we committed to providing a minimum of 10 membership scholarships for minority serving institutions and colleges and universities and community colleges, providing at least 10 scholarships for membership to the organization and to our annual conference. So 10 membership and 10 conference scholarships. Providing scholarships for women-owned and minority-owned businesses into our membership and our conference. And developing an online forum that allows folks to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion together. And then devoting every year, devoting space and time for a DEI meeting at our annual conference, whether in person or virtual. And so those are right now the focus areas. This is a beginning for us, not this is something that we see that will grow. And so this is where we're jumping off from. So far, what we have been able to accomplish, we provided our first conference scholarship to a minority women-owned business this year in 2022. 2021 was kind of an odd year for conferences. We had a virtual conference, so we didn't have any requests for scholarships for 2021. So our first scholarship for minority-owned women business was 2022. We are providing 2 membership scholarships to HBCUs this year, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to provide them with scholarships to the conference once we release our call for scholarship applications. We held our second annual DEI workshop in 2022 that was incredibly well received, with over 120 people attending that workshop in person. And it was facilitated by the amazing Dr. Patricia Smyer, who is the DEI officer for the city of Lexington, North Carolina. And we're currently planning what will be our third DEI workshop for March of 2023. And we've also included questions about DEI in our post-conference survey, just related to attendee perceptions and how they have felt their experience was at our conference, and to allow them to share their feelings about inclusivity and what their experience was like. And lastly, we began adding these questions to our internal board of directors survey that our board of directors does a self-evaluation annually. And so we have added these 2 questions to that. One, asking about the board's understanding of all types of diversity and the representation on the board that they perceive. And then secondly, a similar question to what I mentioned for our conference survey, evaluating folks' feelings that that their ethnic and racial background, their culture and abilities, because it's also relating to learning abilities and other aspects of personality besides just racial and gender and ethnic. And so we wanted to get at all of that and open up the door for our own board to give feedback about anything they're experiencing in an anonymous way that they may not feel comfortable sharing otherwise. And so these are anonymous surveys, and so we have implemented that. So there's still parts of the action plan that we haven't gotten to yet. There's parts of it that have been challenging, and we're trying to work out how to do, especially the data gathering. So we're still working on these, but I think we have come a long way. These are the CRA sponsors, obligatory sponsor slide here. But looking forward to your questions, and thank you for your time.
Thanks, Mary. Before we go on to, we'll go on to Julia, and then we'll address some of the questions that have been in the chat afterwards. So Julia, it's all yours. Feel free to share your slides. I think, Mary, you just need to stop sharing your screen.
Yeah. Okay, let me get my slides up. I can introduce myself. My name is Julia Au. Today, I am representing the Northern California Recycling Association as a board member. I'm also the co-chair of the NCRA DI committee. Different from Mary, in my day job, so NCRA as a board member, I'm a volunteer. In my day job, I'm a senior program manager at a regional government agency in the Bay Area in California. So I will just go over what NCRA has been doing quickly. So who is NCRA? For those who don't know, the Northern California Recycling Association, we're a nonprofit organization founded in 1978 to promote environmentally sound discards management. I took this from the website. So it says we have over 300 members that represent, government, industry. It kind of covers the gamut. And as our name, suggests, we cover mostly Northern California members. And we also provide communities, industry leaders, employees, students, job seekers, and activists the opportunity to collaborate in evolving zero waste education and advocacy. So that's NCRA. We have a unique situation, I guess, that happened with NCRA about our motivation towards working on DEI issues. Our motivation stemmed from an anonymous letter that was sent to the board in response to in 2019, we hold an annual, or every year we hold an annual, what we call recycling update. We received a letter to the board in response to that update, and how this individual felt uncomfortable at the event with this content and what they witnessed and experienced, and invited NCRA to reflect on its role in rooting zero waste in environmental justice and ethnic equity. So we accepted that challenge to adopt inclusivity, collaboration, and ethnic equity as a guiding mission at NCRA. We knew it's important to tackle this head on, so we did post a response to the letter on our website acknowledging the letter. The letter is actually on our website as well. And that as a NCRA board, we own our role in crafting the content framework of our event, and as a space for, the diverse membership that we represent and non-members to explore and learn. So our intention is to serve everybody. So we took that so we responded, I think, in the summer of 2019, to see what we're going to do about it. So what did we do? So first, we formed a DI committee in late 2019, I believe. I know I have some DI committee members here in this session. And I didn't join the committee until January of 2020, but we have regular meetings. And I uniquely want to also mention, during the early part of the pandemic, we actually kind of were each other's support group. So we had a safe space to talk about, what was happening in the world, but also about these important issues about DEI. So, this is, early 2020. And so we did craft a DEI mission statement as a committee. I'm not going to read it all. It's kind of long. But, this took some time. I think it took us a couple months to finalize this. And we're glad that we did it, because that helped us, that was helping us, define our role and what we were doing. I think some of the bigger things, and kind of adding to what Mary had mentioned about, doing research and seeing what was out there. As she said, there wasn't a lot of information out there. So we felt like we were just kind of starting from scratch, but we asked a lot of questions about, how do we create more, what is diversity, what is equity, and what did that mean, and relates to our organization. So something that we really want to do, since we have this annual event and a lot of people attend, was we created a DEI presenter guideline that we used, I think, in 2 events. I think at our 2020 event, maybe, and then this past year we had a hybrid event. We also wanted to create more inclusive events in general, and add a DEI lens to our speaker selection, for our events. We also, and Sophia, I know, also mentioned this in her summary survey, but or summary of the surveys was we also hired a consultant to assist us in this work. We can't just do it ourselves. We aren't experts. So we hired our consulting group helped us lead a 2-part training for our NCRA board, our 11 board members. And we also had 3 consultant sessions to help NCRA employ the principles of diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice I think a lot of our committee members attended as well as board members. So did that. From that, we also actually updated our DEI presenter guidelines to use. But obviously we're still working on this. It costs money to hire a consultant. So, but I think the work that we started was really great. We also hosted a DEI salon on how to create a safe space to discuss social justice. It was our first foray to create a safe space with our members and others to discuss DEI topics. So a salon was just kind of, an opportunity, after work hours because we meet, our committee meets during the workday to talk. And so this was an opportunity to talk with other members of, NCRA and others who were, allies of NCRA to just talk about this. So this was our first one. We hope to host more events. And then obviously continuing to share out to the larger community like I am today. And I know I've had my fellow co-chair of the committee has spoken at NRC, I think last year or the previous year about what we've been doing. So, and also learning, it goes both ways. I'm learning today about what Mary's doing, what Sophia is doing. So I think it's great. We also created a webpage on the NCRA website to just let our members know what we're doing, obviously. And I think something to touch on, I feel like, we've done a lot in 2 years or 2.5, almost 3 years actually. And I just, but we do have limitations and challenges. As I said, NCRA, we have limited staff. I think we have 2 staff actually here today, and we're a volunteer board. So resources are limited. Time related to capacity, obviously, because we're volunteers, and money, obviously, and just agreement. I wrote agreement because, obviously agreeing on how and what we're going to do is hard. We have plans, but, things go sideways when you don't have the time or capacity to do them. So I think we're still growing. And I think I just want to conclude that, we're a work in progress. And that we continue to make a lot of strides. We're a really small and lean committee. I think there's only like 5 or 6 of us that regularly attend our meetings, and we definitely want to grow and get more people involved because we know this is an issue that people care about. So, and that we continue to work on creating more opportunities, at our next conference and other events we do. And thank you for having me.
Thanks, Julia. That was a great presentation. And thanks, Mary, as well. So we have a few questions in the chat. Steve from Cal Recycle asked, what are your groups doing to empower employees to be anti-racist in their workplaces and actively break down institutional racism? That's a great question. And actually, I address it to the panelists, but also to participants if they want to include their strategies in the chat. That would be great to hear. So for Julia and Mary, do you have any response or feedback on that question?
I'm happy to go first on that, Julia, if you want. So I think that when we were working with Dr. Patricia Smyer, who, is a PhD and has a lot of experience with this. She not only spoke at our workshop, but she really helped me kind of understand where to start with people on these conversations. It's important to first understand that everyone is not starting at the same place. And so if you go in with a message like kind of what's been termed here, being anti-racist and et cetera, and you use those terms, it can be it can be too much for some and too little for others. And so everyone is starting kind of at a different place to receive this idea. And so she really advised us on that and had us start really basic in our first workshop. And so just understanding basic concepts of things like microaggression or terminology, even being able to say the words Black or white can be hard for some people. And we're in the South here, so it is definitely a different environment here. And so our goal is to take steps that allow everybody to come with us instead of trying to push down an agenda. So, that's where we're starting from. We're having an open conversation. We are not saying you're wrong, you're right. We are having guided, facilitation by people who know what they're doing, and having these conversations and trying to get dialogue about these issues, including how to be anti-racist and what people can do in their workplace, in the association, about decreasing racism and about really, to me, bringing more people into our fold, to allow more people to participate and for us to recognize, the inherent value of all of these different voices. And so that's where we're at. Julia, you take it away.
I mean, I feel like you did such a great job, Mary, of answering the question. I feel like, and I don't remember the complete context of this question now because I'm reading it. And I think I also wanted to add, and I also looked to my fellow NCRA people who are here, is that we did do an inclusivity survey, I think, to our members. And, we've talked about it in our board, at the board level as well. So I think, but as Mary said, it's continuing to have open conversations. And so we can talk about, this uncomfortableness of just talking about the issue itself. I feel like just itself can be really hard. And I think a lot of it stems from, different areas and just trying to understand each other. But I think we look at asking, these questions of ourselves. I am a board member, but I'm also, a member of this, of NCRA in general, before I was a board member. And kind of going on, and I'm going to skip ahead because this person asked a question later, is just, about, what we're doing to empower our employees. And I think what we're doing is we hope as NCRA, we hope to take what we learn and share that with our membership. And that, for me, like I'm a member, but I also, work at an agency where there are other individuals obviously in this space. We're all members of NCRA, and to share that. So it kind of, in this space, I hope that all of you who are here can take what, Mary and I have shared with you, and Sophia as well, and take that back to your organization and how you can have those conversations and how to do that work, and know that there's a lot of resources out there, and that, we're doing the same thing, that we're looking at what others are doing, and hopefully our consultant will help us and stuff like that. I'm gonna, Sophia, I know you're the moderator, but I see Portia, who was our NCRA executive director, with her hand raised. So I'm sure she's gonna add something, or I said something wrong.
Yeah, no problem. I'll unmute you, Portia.
You can unmute Portia.
Go ahead.
I want to mention that NCRA is not just addressing race and gender issues. We're also addressing disabilities. We're working with a school in the South Bay that serves the deaf population. It's a grade school and high school, if I remember correctly. And we have a member who is deaf, and she and I approached the school years ago, and at the last recycling update, like 12 students attended, as well as the teacher. And one reason this is important is people that are severely hard of hearing have some limited opportunities in the world. Frankly, if I understand correctly, they're taught to be male mailroom employees and janitors. And this is really, really an issue that needs to be addressed because these are smart people in many cases with a lot of potential. And so that's something else that NRCC is doing, is working with the deaf population. And one reason we did this is because we had to hire an interpreter for our associate, and we figured it'd be better to spread it out to a larger group. So 12 students attended, as well as did their professor. Also, people with mobility issues. There's quite a few things to address above and beyond race and gender. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Portia. Steve mentioned in terms of I think this is a strategy that the Government Alliance on Race and Equity model of change, the cycle of normalizing, organizing, and operationalizing. Have either of you heard of this model before? Or I don't know, Steve, if you want to elaborate on it or how CounterCycle has implemented it, please feel free to raise your hand and add to the conversation. Otherwise, Mary or Julia, have you heard of the GARE model of change before?
I have not, but it sounds very interesting, and I would love to learn more about it.
Same, I'm not familiar, but
yeah, none of us are familiar, but we definitely want to learn more. So please post the link or elaborate on it. We do have a question. A question about benchmarking and measuring progress. So how your organization might do that to measure outcomes of some of these programs that you implement, how you do measure progress, if you have any strategies for that, or how you guys do it yourself.
I think for us, I think that the benchmark at the moment is, the participation in our scholarship programs and how successful those are. Attendance at our DEI events and the evaluation of those events. I think that once we figure out a way to standardize measurement and collecting data from our membership and our event attendees, that will help provide some additional, data to look at. But for me, having more and more outreach to groups that may represent some of the diverse groups that we are looking to interact with, is really important for us to get the word out. And so, and to get participation in the programs that we have. And so for me right now, the measure would be those things at the moment. Like I said, this is a process and a beginning. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of, how do you eat a whale one bite at a time? So that's what we're doing. And this is certainly a huge, a huge realm of possibility of what we could do. And we're just getting started.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And what about NRCC, Julia? How do you guys benchmark or measure progress or success?
Kind of, very similar to, I think, what Mary said, was just, something we're working on was to, look at our membership, like, who are our members, and we actually, keep track of everything we've been doing as we meet and talk. We actually have a very robust note-taking system for our meetings and our accomplishments. And I think for us, it's we can measure our success in what the things that we have done, but obviously it's as I said, it's a work in progress. But I think there's a lot of things different to evaluate. So we're tackling things, specifically our one-day event is very popular. And this, because the letters stemmed from that event, that's kind of what motivated us to really focus on making sure that the information presented and the people presenting were more diverse. That kind of, we wanted to make sure that the thing that most people know us for is this event, the recycling update, was what we tackled first. And I think, we had a hybrid event back in March, I think. And I know I got comments from, our members and people who attended that this was the most diverse event they had seen in a really long time, which was great. At least we were moving towards that, but we always can do better. So I think we want to make sure that we continue to move the needle towards the direction that we want to. But I know it starts with, we want to make sure that we get, create a more diverse membership, and that we can get people, obviously there's always costs associated with memberships, but and also involved. I think that's the hardest part. We all have jobs and we're all busy. And I think that's something that we're struggling to work on. But I think, this is an issue that a lot of people care about. So we're hoping people get involved this way, or we have lots of other committees who do other great work and stuff like that. So we're working on the specifics, but I think as a committee, we're definitely committed to that.
Yeah, thanks. I think it's this is a relatively new discussion for this industry specifically, and so there's a lot to be done to make people understand the importance and the place of the justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion within the waste industry. Which brings to a great question from Gary List, who's also on the JEDI committee. Has there been any pushback from your members or sponsors about JEDI initiatives, or has everyone embraced this effort?
I feel like, when we talk about it as a board and we're all for it, I think it's, we're past the point of talking about it. We want to do the work. So, our committee, as I said, is lean, but we're very passionate about this. So it's great. Obviously, my limitations, that stuff comes in the way, but I think I've only heard positive things. I feel like all I hear are like, yes, we need to do this. And we're doing we added a person of color on our board, other groups. And I'm like, that's great. That's a start. But, I'm done talking about this. I want to make sure that we're creating action. And I think that is the hardest part. And I think, but we have to continue talking about it to make sure that we're actually doing things. So that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll say that for us, I think that, in 2020, obviously, so much turmoil was going on, in our nation, and it brought to light these issues in a way that haven't been brought to light in a long time for so many people. And so, that I think that got everybody thinking and being more familiar, with issues that need to be addressed, regarding racial equality and representation and equity and inclusion and diversity. And so I think that was in the rhetoric when my organization, implemented this plan. But I guess what I saw in practice was there was a lot of fear to ask questions. And I'm not going to psychoanalyze people too much, but I think that the fear in asking, do you feel included? Are we respecting you the way we need to? Do you feel like there's other people like you here? Those kind of questions. Are we communicating to you in a way that you can learn from, or do you need more support? Maybe do you need assistance with this because you're hearing impaired or vision impaired or differently abled in your learning style? And so all those things, they asking those questions, I think that some folks were fearful to learn that they might have been doing something wrong. And it was actually stated by one person on our board that if we ask the question, then that opens up the door for people to complain. And so we really had to work on that fear and that trusting each other with this information, and that it's not a personal insult or attack, if we need to improve on something. It's a help and a guidance, and we can, use this information for the better. We're not doing something wrong. And so that's what I have noticed, Gary, is that overcoming some of those mental obstacles in practice.
Yeah, I think there's always a tendency for this when you hear that someone in your organization, someone that you've been working with, has felt not included, has felt that there's a bit of a shock. You take it personally because you might feel bad, and it's very important to understand it's not about you. It's just improving overall practices and operations to make sure that stops, that doesn't continue. So one question we got, and it was directed just to NRCC, but I'm also interested to hear what you're doing, Mary, is how your organizations are specifically addressing environmental injustices in your communities.
I guess I can start. I feel like, as board members, we represent a good wide swath of the environmental industry. A lot of us do come from government. So some of our work can be limited, but I think sometimes government is very progressive and very forward thinking. So it's really great that we can continue to work in those spaces. I was actually just at another meeting yesterday, conference, where they were talking about how, trying to get people to use an event, use a program that they have, and actually just going into the community and knocking on doors and talking to people who don't speak English to let them know, hey, did you know you have access to these programs so that you can use them, so that we don't see, illegally dumped things all over the place. So I feel like as NRCC, I think I can say we support our members and the work that they're doing, and we definitely, in our events, we want to share that to others so they can use that as a template. We never want to be the first person to do something, but if we have to be, we want to be able to share that information and make sure that we have those conversations with our members and with our allies as well. And we work that. We cover such a wide membership because of, we don't cover all of California, but I feel like there's some really great things going on. And I hope that NRCC and our members get to share that, not just in California, but on a bigger level, so that I know everyone here isn't, from California for sure, that there's other people doing great things in other states and even countries. So I think, I think we address it by, look at our membership and see what they're doing, and we are definitely supporters of that. I think our group does it, and we also advocate for those issues. We have a very robust advocacy committee, and they want to support when we can create more diversity, equity, ability. We want to support all that and make sure that we do it on every avenue that we can. So I think that answers the question.
Yes, it does. Thanks. Mary, what about even at the CRA?
Well, you probably noticed that we don't have environmental justice in our DEI statement or in the action plan. And I think that's because just in our states, just with the partner agencies involved and other kind of organizations that also participate in, educating and covering DEI or environmental justice issues as part of DEI, are doing that. And so I didn't think that there was a clear place for that yet in our plan, but I think we're always going to be open to it and allow the committee to steer that in the right direction. We certainly cover environmental justice issues in our content that we provide to the membership in terms of the educational content from time to time. And so that's kind of always been there, but with our constituency, we have not tackled that yet, just because there's not been a clear place for that yet in that plan.
All right, thanks. Makes sense. We have another question from Gary. Are you identifying topics for your conferences that might attract a more diverse audience? For example, there's a lot of diversity amongst employees in the waste and recycling industries. Have you thought about sessions that might help build career ladders for them, for example?
We have, I didn't mention this in the action plan because it's not part of the action plan, but it's kind of happened organically because of the number of board members and participants that are aware of our DEI action plan and wanting to, see that reflected in the conference program. And so, yes, we have added and looked at our conference program through that lens, and really have encouraged, have included language in our marketing for our conference to encourage members and attendee organizations to apply for those scholarships so that they can bring some of their members of their team that maybe haven't participated in our conference in the past, who might be looking for some professional development to come to the conference. And so it hasn't been taken advantage of like I would like. And I think that's just because a lot of it is related to pandemic and staff shortages and labor shortages and things, where it's harder to get, a laborer, a driver, or, a supervisor to come in the office and do that when there's immediate needs. But, I'm hoping that that will improve in the coming years, and we'll be able to provide more, advancement opportunity for a lot of people of more diverse backgrounds and from, other positions in some of our organizations that wouldn't normally be able to come and participate.
Julia, what about Nicola?
Yeah, so for our event, this year we actually just opened a call for papers for event. We don't always do a call of papers. What we used to do, what we have historically done, and if I get this wrong, Portia, you can correct me, is we actually have a committee for our event that go, seek out interesting and things that are happening and try to get that diversity in our speakers, and not just the speakers themselves, but just the topic. Like, I know this year we talked about a lot of things, not just related to recycling and composting, which is always a hot topic here in California, but just what's happening everywhere. And I think it's that way is great because it allows us to find people, but sometimes we can't find people. So obviously opening up for papers is nice because it allows other people to kind of be like, oh, I want to share what I'm doing, because we might not know someone who knows someone who knows someone to know what you're doing. So I think we'll see how this goes. I think our committee is made up of a great group, which includes a DEI committee member on that. And we want to make it, I know he said we wanted to make it the most diverse event next year when we have it in March. And I think we want to include people, that aren't just like program managers like myself doing like the big level work. We want people like boots on the ground. And we want those people to actually come to our events too, to learn more about, like if there's career advancement, like if they can see other opportunities out there for them. I think it's good to know that, we forget there are, where I work, we own and operate a facility that handles recyclables and compostables that move on to the next destination. And those workers, my boss actually spoke on a panel with one of them once. And I think it's really important to hear those perspectives about what they see and what they're experiencing, because that's part of the journey and the part of, at least for me, in my job, my day job, about what happens with recyclables and compostables. Like that process is very important and for people to understand. So I think there's a lot of ways to tackle this, and I think NICRA's trying all the best ways we can to do it. But we know that whatever the outcome is next year, that I'm sure we can do better, and that we'll continue to work on that. So, and I see Portia's hand raised, so.
I was just going to say, yes, please go ahead, Portia, if you have anything to add to what Julia said.
I was the original invitee, so sorry if I I'm pitching so many ideas in here, but I
No
thought it
worries.
was appropriate for the chairs to speak, not me. But I also want to bring up another topic that I don't think I've heard discussed today. It's the people who work at facilities as temps that are providing long-term services. I met one man that's worked at a MRF for 15 years as a temporary employee. No
Wow.
benefits. I imagine not much better than minimum wage and not much room for advancement. I don't think they even have any classes on improving themselves. So this is another issue to throw in the DEI hopper or the JEDI hopper, is the folks who are working in our field in the back of the house, that many are people of color and immigrants who are not making a living wage. So I just wanted to throw that in.
Yeah, absolutely. That's an interesting point, actually. So I'm a adjunct professor. I was talking about informal waste collectors in my class yesterday, and that's something that is common in the developing world. Obviously, they make up a big chunk of waste management in many large developing cities. But I had to point out to my students that here I'm based in New York City, that we have our own version of informal waste collectors, and those are the people who pick up glass bottles, most importantly, and aluminum cans, and take them to get recycled, but especially glass bottles, because we're not able to throw them into our curbside recycling. And of course, they only get the compensation that they get from the grocery store machine, but they're making a huge contribution. I mean, they take care of all my glass bottles, so they're making a huge contribution to our waste management here. And so, there's a huge part of our cities and municipalities, waste management that is being taken care of, people that we don't recognize and are not formalized or even given proper contracts like that. So that's an interesting point. Thank you, Portia. Oh, sorry. Gary had a comment. Jody Aishian, working on zero waste plan for Boston, was getting living wages to be required by the city for their recycling processing contractors. So that's great. That cities are starting to recognize that and integrate that into their contracting and into their legislation. Yes, and they were very essential workers, especially during COVID as well, but not recognized as such. Well, we're nearing the end of our session. I believe we end at 2:45. So I'd like to thank Mary and Julia for a great session. Thank you very much for joining us, and also Portia for jumping in. Thank you, Steve, and also for your contributions to the chat. Those were really helpful. Gary as well. And I should also mention that Gary was basically did the surveys for us, helped develop them and sent them out to our members. And I should have mentioned him in my presentation because he was really the force behind getting our surveys done for this. So thank you very much. And thank you for all our participants. I'm glad you enjoyed this session. And you might want to join me in my next session. Coming up in, I guess, 15 minutes on how we do outreach to underserved communities. Otherwise, if you're more interested in our work, the JEDI committee, please feel free to reach out and definitely join the committee as well. All right, well, thank you. And I guess we can end the session then.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Sophia and Julia.
Thank you.